Multiple female leads, please do not enter if you mind. Former civilization plus current civilization collapse, beginning in Ellie's hometown, also known as collapse. The beginning of immortal cultivation in ancient civilization. It's not just heroes who can save the world, but only those who save the world can be called heroes. In this world, the strong are revered, and the path to immortality is long. Those with weak Tao hearts will find it difficult to overcome the 9 heavenly calamities. This was a warning from Qin Changsheng's master on his first day of introduction. But, Master, what's going on here? Why can't the magic tools here be driven without spiritual power? Why don't the people here have spiritual roots? Most importantly, why are the monsters here completely devoid of spiritual intelligence? Qin Changsheng, from the ancient sect of the Beast sect in another world, failed to cross the 9 heavenly calamities and later arrived here. This is a completely different world, where people lack spiritual power and are replaced by various things that he completely cannot understand. Qin Changsheng had not yet had the opportunity to familiarize himself with this completely unfamiliar place, but a disaster called collapse suddenly struck him. The destruction of a city, the sinking of a continent, the collapse of a large building, who could be the backbone? This is a story called Qin Changsheng, and it also belongs to this civilization. Please do not bring in any other book settings. Everything is based on this book. The initial battle pressure is very strong, mind not to enter. The later plot will be very long, which can be considered slow and hot. Please take your time to read. Chapter 1. Is this a ascent? You are listening at novelfull.audio. This is a house with a backyard, where brains are stored, familiar ceiling. In a slightly dim but relatively clean room, Qin Changsheng rubbed his head and slowly got up. Yawning and pulling open the curtains, the sun outside had just risen, and the warm winter light shone on the small town. The sunlight penetrated the ice cones on the eaves and shone on his face. All of this is just an ordinary winter day, without any characteristics or flaws. But in Qin Changsheng's eyes, this small town outside the window was completely unfamiliar. The iron boxes on the road, without livestock pulling carts or any spiritual fluctuations, could run on their own. The house is not made of wood, let alone simple stones, but rather a more complex structure. All of this is new to Qin Changsheng. Some people may think that this is an era, but it's hard to say that he grew up in a secluded place. Has he never had any contact with the outside world? In fact, that's true. Qin Changsheng was not originally from this world, he came from another world. People there were born with spiritual roots, which can resonate with the spiritual energy between heaven and earth, enhance their strength through breathing and absorption, and even achieve longevity, which is also known as cultivation. Qin Changsheng was a disciple of the ancient sect, the Beast sect, and was praised by the elders as the most promising genius for 1,000 years. No one knows his background, but it was the leader of the sect who brought him back after a trip. He has shown astonishing talent since childhood. At the age of 8, he successfully built his foundation and entered the cave at the age of 11. At only 16, he is already a cultivator in the Golden Core realm. Afterwards, within less than 100 years, he practiced at an astonishing speed to the realm of transforming gods. As long as he could successfully overcome the 9 heavenly calamities, he could completely escape from heaven and earth, live the same life as heaven and earth, and become a true immortal. But it was such a genius who unexpectedly fell while crossing the tribulation, with no bones left. Even the primordial spirit had no time to escape, so it completely dissipated. Only he knew that he had never crossed the tribulation. He had already arrived in this world before the first thunder tribulation hit him. At first, he thought it was an illusion constructed by his inner demons, but gradually gave up this foolish idea. After all, even if it was an illusion, it had to be something he knew the principles of. The ubiquitous technological products are still a bit too advanced for Qin Changsheng. He didn't even invent electricity in his childhood, let alone other things like cars and airplanes. However, the only thing worth celebrating is language. As the chief disciple of the beast sect, communication with both humans and spirit beasts is extremely important. He is born with the ability to understand the meaning of others through language, even in completely different languages. With this innate talent, he can learn new languages in this world without any pressure. Dee, what are you doing with so much thought? If you come, take it easy. It's already this time, we need to prepare breakfast for the kids. The honking of the car on the road pulled back his wandering thoughts, taking a long breath and murmuring to himself. He is currently in an orphanage in the garden town of Vostok.51, where the director of the orphanage, who is a very kind woman, is taking him in. For some reason, when Qin Changsheng arrived in this world, his body was only his appearance when he was 8 years old, and even his strength had retreated back to the foundation building period. He walked on the road wearing thin clothes, and was then brought back by the kind dean. Gently twisting the door, the other rooms around him were still quiet. Qin Changsheng slowed down his pace to avoid waking up the sleeping little ones. He walked through the long corridor and arrived at the kitchen in a familiar car. Due to his height, it was difficult for him to reach the stove, so he could only stand on a small stool. After so many days of life, he also learned how to use this gas stove. The gas stove that is used all year round inevitably has problems with the battery, and it has not ignited the fire twice in a row. Qin Changsheng slightly activated his spiritual power, and a small spark bloomed at his fingertips. Wow, what is this? Is it magic? The sudden sound startled him and he was about to fall off the small stool. Fortunately, a pair of soft hands hugged him from behind, avoiding intimate contact between Qin Changsheng and the floor. No, it's just a little trick, and why don't you walk without any sound? Without looking back, Qin Changsheng knew who this prank was. Sure enough, a pink furry head leaned up from behind his shoulder and propped his chin on it. This unknown girl is a child from an orphanage and came here earlier than Qin Changsheng. As for why she is called unknown, it is only because she is not very satisfied with the name chosen by the dean's wife. In her words, well, no matter how you listen, these names are not cute enough to fit a beautiful girl like me, right? When Qin Changsheng first arrived here, this girl showed some excessive enthusiasm towards him, chattering around him all day, but she didn't dislike him. After all, who could refuse such a girl? Did it scare you? I'm sorry, they just don't want to disturb you. A soft breath blew on his face, and Qin Changsheng felt a slight itching in his ear. Ignoring the girl's exaggerated expression, Qin Changsheng stood firmly on the chair again. Aren't you planning to come up with a name for yourself? It's so inconvenient without a name. I think the dean's wife's previous words like Alicia and Thea are quite good. Well, but none of these names are cute enough. The girl's tone was unusually conflicted and aggrieved. A name is very important, I must choose my favorite name for myself. It's up to you. In short, it's better to make an early decision. Today's breakfast is soybean milk and steamed stuffed buns. Go and wake up your friends. While chatting with the girl, Qin Changsheng kept moving. The dough was kneaded into dough on his hands, and then the stuffing was put into it, and then the evenly folded buns were made. Each bun was exactly the same. In the eyes of others, it's hard to imagine this 8-year-old child still having this kind of skill, but for the young girl, it's already commonplace. After Qin Changsheng arrived at the orphanage, these delicious dishes were just daily meals for the children. The dishes made by Changsheng are said by the dean's wife to come from China. It's really amazing that there are so many different ways to eat the same thing. The little girl didn't understand the difference between steamed buns and pancakes, but it didn't stop her from having a little longing for these delicacies and Qin Changsheng's hometown. Well, okay, let's go play in the forest together after dinner. As long as we sneak out, the dean's wife won't notice. The girl shrugged her cute little nose and suggested. Sorry, I have to go shopping with the dean's wife today. I may not have time to accompany you, but I will bring you a gift back. Qin Changsheng said with some embarrassment. Well, okay, they will look forward to it. After speaking, the girl turned around and ran out, her cheerful steps and swaying skirts in the air with her movements. The girl was like a flying pink butterfly, dancing gracefully. Baozi, as we all know, is not difficult to eat as long as the filling is delicious enough. For children in orphanages, this kind of food is undoubtedly more attractive to the previously unchanging toast and milk. The dean's wife arrived first in the hall, and Qin Changsheng had already placed food on everyone's seats. As she watched the little children bustling around with steamers, the dean's wife felt a little heartbroken in her eyes. It was the parents of such a well-behaved child who abandoned him so cruelly. Changsheng, stop being busy and let the children go to the kitchen to pick it up by themselves. You can't always spoil them like this. It's okay, madam. I've already gotten used to it, especially since it's also a form of exercise for me. You child. During their conversation, there were already noisy voices outside the door, and the children were always full of vitality. The childish voice brought a different kind of warmth to this winter morning. The children, who were originally noisy, couldn't help but behave well when they saw the dean's wife when they entered the door. They sat honestly in their seats, waiting for Qin Changsheng to feed them. After everyone was given food, the dean's wife first prayed devoutly, and then let the children start eating. This welfare home was originally funded by the church, and next to it is the church in the small town. The dean's wife herself is also a devout nun. Qin Changsheng also sat in his seat, with the children beside him shouting loudly while being scalded by freshly steamed buns, and their faces dirty as they ate them in large gulps, constantly praising his craftsmanship. And just now the pink girl sat next to him, happily squinting her eyes to enjoy the delicious food, her cheeks bulging as if she didn't feel hot at all. Eat slowly, don't you think it's too hot? I specially left a few red bean fillings for you. You can go to the kitchen to heat them up when you're hungry later. Qin Changsheng swallowed the food in his mouth and whispered a sermon to the girl. Upon hearing the words, red bean filling, the girl's eyes seemed to flash with a flash of light, but then she said with some concern. Is it really okay? That's not good, is it? It's okay, anyway, no one else can eat it, and only you can eat so much. Before Qin Changsheng could finish speaking, he quietly moved his chair closer to the dean's wife, ensuring that if the girl didn't stand up, she wouldn't touch him. Sure enough, the girl who heard this sentence was stunned for a moment, her agile big eyes seemed to have lost their light. Then, she tightly clenched her small fist and turned her head to look fiercely at Qin Changsheng. Before the dean's wife's gaze turned, she quickly transformed into an appearance of nothing happening. This series of movements made Qin Changsheng shudder. In just a few seconds, a person could change so many expressions. It must be said that he was also exceptionally talented. This is also quite good, isn't it? Qin Changsheng whispered in his heart. At least there isn't that much danger here, there's no need to work hard to cultivate. This world is really amazing. Chapter 2. Names. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After breakfast, the children left the restaurant one by one, leaving only Qin Changsheng, the pink girl, and the dean's wife. Before leaving, the girl blinked at Qin Changsheng to show not to forget her gift, and then walked out of the restaurant, leaving Qin Changsheng and the dean's wife inside. The girl walked happily through the corridor, smiling at everyone she met along the way. No one would hate such a girl, this is the consensus of everyone. Hey, can't even the flowers in the garden bloom in winter? Coming into a somewhat desolate flower garden, looking at the bare branches in front of her, the girl felt a rare sense of disappointment. In order to boost her spirits, she began to imagine some beautiful things, such as red bean-filled buns. Qin Changsheng just commented that she was very edible. This is not beautiful at all. How could you say that to him? I will ignore him all day today. But he also said he wanted to bring me a gift. That's half a day. No, that's just an hour. I've decided, today the lovely girl will ignore that annoying guy for a whole hour. The girl gave birth to a verdict for Qin Changsheng in her heart, nodded in satisfaction, and looked at the flower garden in front of her, with a sly smile on her lips. Since flowers don't bloom in winter, then the beautiful girl should use some cute magic. As the words fell, something magical happened. The originally bare branches began to sprout tender buds, sprouting flower buds and showcasing their figures in the winter sunshine. The girl gently folded off these beautiful flowers and arrived at the entrance of the welfare home. Good morning, Sister Willett. You're very beautiful today. This flower is for you. Thank you, but haven't you come up with a name yet? Uncle Luoze, I hope this bouquet of flowers can bring you a good mood for the day. Thank you very much, but by the way, Miss Celia hasn't given you a name yet. Grandma Natalie, this flower is for you. I hope your body is healthy and healthy. Oh, thank you, little girl. I came up with a name last night that should be very suitable for you. The flowers in the girl's hand have already been sent out, and it is not surprising that both those who received the flowers and passers-by would ask her name when they saw her, but she always fooled her with coquettish methods. It's really troublesome. What kind of name should we choose? Although Celia's mother and everyone have chosen good names, it's not the most perfect option after all. The girl walked in the winter forest, holding a small stick in her hand. When she saw a place with deep snow, she would run over and draw a note on it to remind passers-by. Today's girl is somewhat lacking in enthusiasm, for no other reason than the issue of her own name. Everyone cares about her, and this concern not only brings joy to the girl, but also causes some small confusion. Qin Changsheng followed behind Celia, and they were currently at the market in the town. This was the busiest place in this winter town, with a dazzling array of goods on shelves. Some things Qin Changsheng knew, while others he had never seen at all, making him unable to help but marvel again at how good the ordinary world is. There is not so much fighting and killing, people rely on their diligent hands to create wealth. Since coming here, many people they have met hold good intentions towards themselves and generously extend a helping hand. In this world, the strong are respected, while the weak can only be eliminated. The path of immortality is long, and everyone you encounter may covet the treasures on your body. Murders and treasure grabs are not uncommon. My disciple, in future affairs, you must be careful and even more careful. This is a warning from his master, the former head of the Imperial Beast sect, when he was taken as an apprentice. That world is indeed like this. Some people, in order to become stronger and pursue longevity, can do anything, not to mention killing, even darker things are not without them. Qin Changsheng was not a person with lofty ambitions. Everything in his past life was pushed by those around him, whether it was cultivation or guarding the way against demons. In the end, he never truly lived a carefree life. The simple truth is that the sect has invested resources to cultivate him, and he should also give back to the sect. It is precisely because of these experiences that this ordinary and warm daily life is particularly precious to Qin Changsheng. Madam Dean, please wait a moment. Qin Changsheng's eyes caught a glimpse of a somewhat special shop, so he made a sound to stop Celia walking ahead. Celia stopped at the sound and followed Qin Changsheng's gaze. It was a bookstore with many picture books for children to read on the storefront window. Changsheng, do you like these picture books? We can buy some back. Celia thought Qin Changsheng was interested in these picture books, but she didn't expect him to shake his head. No, I promised to bring her a gift today. Can you wait for me a little longer? Celia nodded and did not ask who he meant by she, clearly having an answer in her heart. Then Qin Changsheng took a step and ran to the bookstore door. A picture book with a pink-haired girl printed on the cover caught his attention, and he picked it up to take a look. The picture book is well packaged and the content inside is not visible, but she will definitely like it just because of this cover. He looked at other picture books again, nodded, and finally decided it was it. Shopkeeper, no, boss, I want to buy this book. The welfare home still gives some pocket money to the children every month, and since Qin Changsheng came to take care of the children's meals, Celia secretly gives him more pocket money every month. Unfortunately, Qin Changsheng had nowhere to use it, and he was not interested in children's snacks. There were no pills for cultivation in this world, so most of them were saved. Occasionally, he would buy candy and other small things for other children. After paying the money, the boss saw that Qin Changsheng was still young and thoughtfully hung some large bags around his neck, which made Qin Changsheng feel a bit embarrassed, but it didn't matter. After all, I'm still young, he comforted himself in this way. With something hanging around his neck, he couldn't run fast anymore. As he walked up to Celia, the dean's wife held his small hand, and the soft touch made him feel a bit shy. After all, as a cultivator, he understood everything. Except for some magical methods, most cultivators are pure-minded and have few desires. In addition, since he is still young, if he indulges in worldly desires, he will not have such a fast cultivation speed. This is all a privilege for children. Qin Changsheng did not resist either and walked forward with the force in Celia's hand. Most of the merchants along the way knew the director of this welfare institution. Seeing that she was still with a child, they all said they would send her to the welfare institution later after selecting the items. I bought some food and daily necessities, and I also asked Qin Changsheng for his opinion on some things. After all, he is currently responsible for the meals in the orphanage. Thinking of this, even Celia felt a bit ashamed. Since Qin Changsheng arrived, the food made by the caregivers could no longer satisfy the taste of the children. Even the most popular cookies in the past were swept into the garbage heap of history. A group of people gathered in front of the notice board at the market entrance not far ahead, and Celia also walked over with Qin Changsheng. Dear residents, there have been dangerous wild animals appearing in the forest near the town of Vostok.51 recently. The government has organized experienced hunters to deal with them. Before the danger is eliminated, residents are advised to pay attention to safety when traveling and do not enter the forest unless necessary. At the end of the notice, there is a unique seal, 1.5 circles, in which is a moth with wings burning. How could there be wild beasts? I've never seen them in all these years. Yes. However, since we have already asked someone to handle it, it's better to be careful during this period. The crowd was a bit noisy, and this news was somewhat unexpected for this usually peaceful town. Listening to the discussion among the crowd, Qin Changsheng couldn't help but worry and unconsciously increased his strength when he remembered the invitation from the young girl to him in the morning. What's wrong? Are you scared? Don't worry, the government will handle it well, and the Lord will bless us. Sensing the abnormality of the young man, Celia thought she was afraid and lowered her head to comfort her. After thinking for a moment, Qin Changsheng decided to tell Celia about what had happened this morning. After all, his current body was indeed too weak. Although he could use some small spells, the forest was so large that without exploration methods, it was difficult for him to find someone to reach the sky. After listening to Qin Changsheng's words, Celia was clearly worried and hurriedly rushed to the orphanage with him. The two of them turned a corner and the orphanage was ahead. The two of them couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief when they saw the pink delicate flower standing at the door. Heaven knows how worried they were. Celia put down the hand holding Qin Changsheng, lifted her skirt, and walked up to the girl. She angrily tapped her pink-haired head, which was really an unsettling girl. Qin Changsheng remained silent, just looking at her with a hint of concern. You didn't go to the forest today, did you? Just when Changsheng and I returned, we saw a notice saying that it was not safe in the forest during this period. I thought something was wrong with you. You must not run into the forest during this time. Oh, no, Celia's mother. I was very well behaved today and stayed here all day. The girl covered her knocked head and explained to Celia while glaring fiercely at Qin Changsheng. She already knew exactly who was betraying her. Damn it, ignoring your time, I need to add another hour. After preaching to the girl, Celia still let her go. She understood the truth that too much is better than too much, and she also believed that the girl would be much more careful after this incident. After all, how could such a young girl not be afraid of fierce beasts? Is that right? Some of the materials purchased before have already been delivered, so Celia left the two of them to command the warehouse, leaving only the girl and Qin Changsheng staring at each other. The girl's expression gradually became more dangerous, and Qin Changsheng quickly took off the picture book from under his neck and blocked it in front of him. His white and tender fists stopped in front of him. Even so, I still have small emotions. Sorry, I was worried about you after hearing the news earlier. You didn't encounter any danger today, did you? Qin Changsheng didn't believe that the girl didn't run away at all, so he directly asked her if she had encountered anything in the forest. No, I haven't touched anything. Is this a gift for me? Thank you, I will accept it with gratitude. The girl took the picture book from his hand, and at the moment she saw the cover, her previously depressed mood instantly improved, with a sweet smile on her lips. Qin Changsheng didn't ask any more questions. After all, such a girl couldn't come back in any danger, could she? Chapter 3. Alicia. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Outside the town of Vostok. 51 is a forest with a suitable climate. Although most people are familiar with this forest, it is possible for wild animals to actually appear. The noon sun shone on the snow, and the winter forest was snow-white. Walking on such snow was very obvious. At this moment, a group of people were wearing winter jackets and holding strange weapons, surrounded by a huge monster in the middle. However, the monster had already collapsed on the snow without any movement. Captain Chen, this is already the third tank-level collapse beast we have discovered. As before, there is no collapse that can react. Can you tell anything? Said a man with a wound on his face. As before, the assassin only launched one attack and killed the disintegrating beast, without any signs of engagement. Soldiers report while tapping on tactical terminals. Scar rubbed his head with a headache. This is already the second time this month. The fire-chasing Moth branch detected the collapse and responded, and then sent someone to check. Every time, they found nothing, and at least the body was left behind. The first time, nothing was even found. Trace, have you found anything? A coquettish voice came from the communication channel, but Chen put on a flattering expression and said. Dr. Mebius, we have indeed discovered the vandalized beast this time, but there is still no clue as to who exactly suppressed it. Before he could finish speaking, he realized that his deputy pointed to the tactical terminal. Oh, it's not entirely without gains. He quickly changed his tune. Are you teasing me? Hin, will you come to my laboratory after the mission is over? Cough, no, absolutely not, Dr. Mebius. Although we haven't found anything, one thing is certain. Someone must have entered this place before we arrived. Oh. Tell me, what did you find? Mebius showed some interest. You see, on our way over, there were these notes on the snow, and in fact, we followed them to find the wreckage of these shattered beasts. On the other side, in the Mebius laboratory, she looked at the pictures that had been marked, and the notes on them seemed like children's graffiti. Mebius only felt that a string called reason in his mind was about to break. Are you saying that it's a child who single-handedly crushes a tank-level collapsing beast that requires a small team to deal with? She gritted her teeth and said. Fool, when you come back, I must cut open your brain and see what's inside. After speaking, the communication was cut off, leaving only a trace on the opposite side and one's deputy looking at each other. Dr. Mebius's laboratory, hissing, the deputy looked sympathetically at his superior, and then calculated in his heart that based on his military achievements, if the captain was gone, the next captain would be myself. But looking at the somewhat dangerous look in Mark's eyes, he still swallowed this sentence into his stomach. Mebius sat on the chair, looking at the picture that came back. Although he cursed harshly, it was just a simple annoyance to him. Who said that guy was plotting against his assistant? This intelligence is undoubtedly correct. Can anyone really do such a thing? From her childhood experience, Mebius realized how fragile humans are. If this is true, there is no doubt that this discovery has shown her the possibility of realizing her ideals. It's okay, little mouse. I can always find you. The night gradually shrouded the small town, and today's orphanage was somewhat different. The usually noisy little ones were obediently staying in the hall, and there were no lights on around, only a few candles were lit. The girl was a bit puzzled today. Where did everyone go? Why wasn't even Celia's mother in the room? In the afternoon, everyone felt strange. Just as I pushed open the door to the lobby, the originally dim room suddenly lit up. Happy birthday! Everyone cheered together, and Qin Changsheng also pulled the pull tab. With a bang. Colorful ribbons danced in the air. The girl was somewhat surprised and stared blankly at everyone. The children were surrounding her, and Celia was holding a cake with candles on it. Qin Changsheng was by her side, helping her remove the ribbons from her hair. What's wrong, aren't you happy? Everyone is very serious about celebrating your birthday. Qin Changsheng quietly reminded the girl in her ear. Mrs. Celia walked up to the girl with a cake, which was written with cream as, "Happy birthday to you." It was surrounded by beautiful flowers and decorated with dried fruits and vegetables. Child, I'm sorry I don't know your exact birthday, but last year today, you became a part of our big family, and this is already worth celebrating, isn't it? Celia said gently to the girl. No, Celia's mother, today is my birthday. The girl quietly wiped her slightly moist eyes and looked at everyone looking at her. Thank you all. With everyone accompanying me, today is my happiest day. It's time to make a wish. Qin Changsheng was a bit anxious. This girl is usually quite clever. How could she feel dull today? Even as an outsider, she knows the process and still needs me to remind her. The girl didn't know what Qin Changsheng was thinking. With his reminder, she crossed her fingers and placed them in front of her little mouth, quietly making her wish, and then blew out the candle. After blowing out the candles, it was time to divide the cake. This was the happiest time for the children, and they all gathered around Celia urging each other. Qin Changsheng was curious about what the girl had made a wish. What wish did you make? Wishes and other things don't work when spoken out, and the girl's intentions are a little secret. Qin Changsheng pursed his lips. Since people don't want to say anything, they can't force others. Is it possible that some people can see what others are thinking in their minds? Sister, Celia's mother said that Changsheng brother sent you a storybook today. Can you tell us a story? A little carrot pulled the girl's skirt and looked at her with some anticipation. Of course you can. The girl returned to her room and took out the picture book that Qin Changsheng had given her today. She had originally planned to read it on her own in bed at night, but since everyone was so curious, the girl didn't care about sharing this happiness together. The children sat around the young girl, carefully opening the first birthday gift of their lives. This is a fairy tale adapted from an ancient legend. Legend has it that there is a paradise located at the end of the world. The protagonist of the story embarks on a journey in search of this paradise, but everyone says that paradise doesn't exist. The protagonist did not give up. He constantly traveled, explored, and experienced countless hardships, finally arrived at the end of this trip. It's a very inspirational fairy tale, Changsheng. Your vision is quite good, Celia said to Qin Changsheng. Before he could reply, the girl's voice continued to ring. And there was nothing there. The legendary paradise really didn't exist. Qin Changsheng smiled awkwardly, not expecting such a situation. But the protagonist didn't give up. She stood at the end of the world and shouted loudly, "If the amusement park doesn't exist, then I'll create one myself." The girl's voice became somewhat excited. So she embarked on a longer and more arduous journey. Her goals are several times easier, and the process is full of twists and turns. They cheered, embraced each other, and sang for their dreams to come true. They finally arrived at the amusement park, where it was. At the end of this journey, people cheered and shouted its name. At this point, the girl's pupils unconsciously widened, leaving only the last word from the story in her eyes. It's this. Flawless paradise. Eternal paradise. Name. Name. My name is, Alicia. The girl suddenly looked up and said loudly. After she finished telling the story, the children were all discussing the girl's name, and they couldn't fully understand its meaning, but this did not hinder their love and praise for the name. Mrs. Celia and the caregiver played a few more small games with the children. This brief birthday party came to an end, and the younger children were taken back to their rooms by caregivers to rest. The girl, Alicia, sat next to Qin Changsheng, still recalling the story in her mind. Celia didn't disturb the two little ones, just quietly walked out of the hall, leaving ample space for them. A very nice name, Alicia, it suits you very well. When? Of course, a flawless paradise, an eternal paradise, isn't such a cute name perfect for me. Alicia turned her head to look at Qin Changsheng, her cute little face filled with a joyful smile. Is there anything more romantic than getting your own name from the first gift in life? Thank you, Changsheng. I really like this gift. Alicia extended her hands and gently embraced him, which was a compliment to someone. Qin Changsheng also patted Alicia's head, causing the girl's protest and a violent punch. After sending her back to his room, Qin Changsheng also returned to his own room and lay in bed, but he couldn't sleep anymore. He was somewhat concerned about the news he saw on the bulletin board today. Is it really just a beast causing trouble? Since arriving in this world, he has found that there is no such thing as spiritual energy, and instead, there is another completely opposite energy. He doesn't know what this energy is, the only thing he can be certain of is that he can still break through the realm by absorbing this energy. However, as the world here seemed less dangerous, he felt that there was no need for cultivation, and his strength during the foundation building period was already fully sufficient. Not to mention forming an army alone, dealing with dozens of ordinary people casually is not a problem. The so-called firearms in this world cannot even penetrate his protective true chi, let alone harm him. He actually sensed that special energy in the forest, but based on his experience, it was just a very ordinary, spiritual tide. Spiritual power doesn't pose any harm to ordinary people, right? However, the notice I saw today reminded him that the world may not be that simple. Just as I sensed the spiritual tide, some kind of beast appeared. Forget it, maybe it's just a coincidence. Since it's a unique energy in this world, I'm sure they don't know how many eras to study. Someone should be able to handle it properly. After finding an excuse in his heart not to practice, Qin Changsheng closed his eyes with peace of mind. I have to say, the name Alicia really sounds nice. Chapter 4. This world is not safe at all. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Tisk, damn it, why do I have the illusion that this world is very safe? What kind of monster is this? Fires were everywhere, and intense roars could be heard in the distance. Qin Changsheng was hiding in a collapsed ruin, and the monster in front of him was covered in scars, but he still relentlessly attacked him. Qin Changsheng suddenly turned his body, narrowly avoiding the falling beam of light from the sky. He silently recited the Dharma while holding his sword finger in his right hand. With a volley of lightning, a thunderbolt appeared out of nowhere and struck the monster. The monster's movements did not ease at all, and the halo swept over, causing Qin Changsheng to roll and dodge in a wolf-like manner. Do you want to be so unreasonable? You also need to pay attention to the basic law when opening cheats. Qin Changsheng cursed fiercely. All of this was because an hour ago, something outside the town was engaged in a fierce battle, and various roars woke up the peaceful town. Qin Changsheng immediately woke up the people in the welfare home, only to find that Alicia was not in his room. Worried, he sneaked out alone while Mrs. Celia was comforting the children. The range of the basic search technique was only 200 meters, and he could only wander around the town, following a few clues and arriving here. As soon as I arrived, I saw this monster and launched an attack on him as soon as I realized he was a living person. Qin Changsheng was forced to engage in battle, but he soon realized that this monster was really unreasonable. The spiritual fire during the foundation building period could not even burn its skin, and there was no pain at all. The speed and intensity of the attack did not weaken in the slightest after resisting several of his moves. The hard ground was easily shattered like tofu under the monster's hands, and Qin Changsheng had no doubt that this thing could instantly penetrate his body. My attack is ineffective, the opponent's attack is fatal. How should I turn the tables? Answer. Wait until you die, there's no way to save it. This is the current situation. During the construction period, compared to ordinary people, there is only a difference between being able to use magic and not being able to use magic. He found that every attack of this demon beast was attached with that unique energy, and his protective true chi was instantly neutralized upon contact. What's the point of playing with this? Conventional attacks are ineffective against it, and even stronger moves cannot be used by oneself. Even if used, they will only be sucked into the body due to the inability to support the spell. Those who step up against enemies are all scams. 10 yuan is 10 yuan, how could you buy something worth 20 yuan? The speed of this monster is too fast, it can't run or fight. Young master, I won't really die here, will I? Thunderbolt didn't kill me, but I will be turned into flesh pieces by the monster. Don't do this kind of thing. Qin Changsheng awkwardly dodged the monster's attack while thinking about the turning point in his mind. The monster's attack once again successfully broke through his defense, and he couldn't dodge, leaving a fierce wound on his shoulder. A flash of spiritual light flashed in his mind. He used the spiritual power refined by himself to activate his spells, and the essence of this power still came from the unique energy of this world. Every attack by the monster is directly mobilizing the power in the air for attack. Monster's attack equals unique energy. I can absorb this force and turn it into my own strength. So that means you hit me equals I reply equals I hit you. Correct solution. The formula for victory has been completed, and now it's my turn. Smoking no, take it. Thinking of this layer, Qin Changsheng quickly changed the form of his protective true chi, from passive defense to a spiritual vortex that specifically absorbs external energy. The next attack of the monster followed, and this time he did not dodge, but instead used his body to push it up. The purple beam of light hit his body, but it was easily absorbed by the spiritual vortex and transformed into the spiritual power he could use. Qin Changsheng, who noticed this phenomenon, grinned at the corner of his mouth. Your attack is over. Now, it's my turn. A mage with sufficient mana is invincible, especially for Qin Changsheng. These low-level spells are basically instantaneous. By continuously absorbing the opponent's energy and using it to counterattack, the monster quickly drowned in the light of various spells. Seeing this thing finally fall, he also breathed a sigh of relief. Although winning was not honorable, it was a good thing to be able to win. It's quite embarrassing to think about it now, not to mention the lines from earlier. This must be Alicia's fault. It's all because she likes to pull me to watch that thing called TV. However, when it comes to Alicia, I don't know where this girl went. The traces I found earlier have completely disappeared here. The wound on his shoulder was still bleeding, causing him to grin in pain. However, he didn't have time to handle it properly now and could only use the method of sealing acupoints to forcibly stop the bleeding. This method places a heavy burden on the body. If it weren't for rushing, Qin Changsheng wouldn't have done it. Just as he was about to leave, a figure quietly approached him. A sense of crisis came, and he suddenly turned back to prepare for a counterattack. However, the next second, his eyes darkened and he lost consciousness. The last thing I saw was a touch of pink. Alicia gently caught him and let him lean against her. The girl's seemingly soft body seemed to have tremendous energy. Her eyes were somewhat complicated. She knows she's different, but now she doesn't have an answer. Sorry Changsheng, Alicia is leaving. If she continues to stay here, the people in town, the orphanage, and you will all be in danger. The girl's eyes were filled with reluctance, and her face was filled with guilt. Alicia, who was originally resting, was awakened by a strange feeling and then followed her inner guidance to leave the orphanage and enter the forest. Subsequently, the girls saw a large number of monsters and a group of people fighting, and of course, kind-hearted Alicia couldn't sit idly by and quietly help them. He sneaked away before being discovered again, but on the way back, he saw Qin Changsheng being injured by a monster. Just as he was about to help him, he found that Qin Changsheng had started to suppress the monster and fight again. Upon seeing this scene, Alicia quietly hid for some reason, not wanting Changsheng to discover her uniqueness at all. After seeing Qin Changsheng defeat the monster, he not only did not prepare to return to the orphanage, but also continued to walk in the direction before her. In a hurry, he knocked him unconscious. Well, Changsheng, Alicia is really a bad child. The girl gently caressed the boy's cheek, and a faint pink light penetrated his body. The wound on his shoulder began to heal at a visible speed to the naked eye. She slowly lowered her head, leaned over his ear, and whispered. We will definitely meet again, and once Alicia understands her identity, she will definitely come back and find you. It's like bidding farewell, and it's also like a promise. Alicia took Qin Changsheng back to the orphanage and quietly placed him at the door. She then opened his palm and stuffed a pink crystal flower into his hand. After finishing all of this, she was about to leave when she was stopped by a voice. Alicia, child, are you leaving? Celia's gentle voice came from behind. Celia's mother. I think, get out of here, get out of this town. Upon hearing this, Celia fell silent for a moment. Alicia thought she would be scolded harshly, but Celia gently warned her. When you are alone outside, you must be more careful. There are many problems that you need to face and make choices on your own. But my mother believes in you, just like you have always done. Just follow your own heart, but I will not help you hide it from you. I will tell him everything and let him make his own choices, just like I did to you. This is good, this is good. The girl eventually disappeared into the darkness, and the only thing she took away from the orphanage was the picture book. On the other hand, the forest is cleaning up the battlefield, taking away the wreckage of the collapsed beasts, while the logistics team is organizing the results of this battle. Himiko, thank you for your support. This outbreak of small-scale collapse has actually produced a collapsed emperor. Fortunately, you have successfully suppressed it, otherwise our losses would have been even more severe. Mark lit a cigarette and said to the woman with red hair beside him. Ha! What kind of collapse emperor? We haven't encountered a collapse emperor at all. Most of the collapse beasts we are fighting against are of the assault and crossbow levels. I thought you killed this collapse emperor. After hearing this, the red-haired woman Himiko felt a bit confused. Although having military achievements is good, she can't take credit for others. Chen also looked at her with some confusion. There were only two teams here. His own team did not take down the collapse emperor, and Himiko's team did not take down it either. This thing can't have been hit dead on the wall by oneself, can it? If I go back and report like this, the doctor will tear me apart. At the thought of Mebius, I couldn't help but shiver. No, there's another person who fought alone against 3 chariot-level collapse beasts before. Maybe it's this hero who took the initiative. Thinking of this, I had a number in my heart and happily filled in the task report. The Trace team and the 5th team successfully fought against the small-scale collapse of the Vostok.51 colony. During the mission, an unknown person intervened to solve the collapse of the Emperor. According to on-site investigations, this person is highly likely to be the same individual as the mysterious person in the previous 2 operations. Just as I sent the report to Mebius email, the deputy of the trace found him. Report, sir. After analysis, we can completely rule out the speculation that this battle scene was the same person as the previous 2 times. The damage in this battle is extremely serious. Based on the traces of the scene, it is impossible for this mysterious person to silently suppress the tank-level collapse beast with his ability. Therefore, I infer that this is a team or organization, and in short, it cannot be the same individual. The smile on Scar's face stiffened, and he trembled as he reached out his hand and patted his adjutant's shoulder. You kid really wants me to die. Okay, I'll leave my seat to you in the future. After saying these words, he left the scene with a look of helplessness, ready to find a deserted place to wait for Mebius's communication. Himiko on the side was somewhat gloating and gave a thumbs up to his deputy. Well done. Only the deputy stood in place. Sir, what does this mean? Is that so? But the chief hasn't said whether or not to submit this attachment yet. Forget it, let's submit it. Didn't we submit it every time before? I also follow the usual practice of handling things. I have seen many close aides like me, Officer Chen. Please cherish them. Chapter 5. Golden Elixir. You are listening at novelfull.audio. 8 years later, Shanghai City in a rented room, the boy sitting cross-legged on the bed slowly opened his eyes, and an imperceptible light flashed through his eyes. This body is still too weak, without those cultivation resources, it is difficult to support future cultivation. The young man was Qin Changsheng. Since Elixir left without hesitation 8 years ago, he deeply realized that he was too weak and had once again embarked on the path of cultivation. After the incident, the government decided to evacuate the residents of the town, and the welfare home naturally dissolved. Some of the children were adopted or assigned to other places. Qin Changsheng, on the other hand, was deported back to Shanghai City due to the face of a person from Shenzhou, and was provided with education by the government until he reached adulthood. Qin Changsheng tidied up his clothes and looked at the time. It was not far from class, and the past few years had also helped him adapt to modern life. Picking up the backpack placed on the chair, a photo frame was placed in the corner of the table. The pink girl rushed up from behind, while the boy looked helpless and caught her. This photo was given to him by Mrs. Celia, and it was also the only photo he had with Alicia. Pinched the crystal flower hanging on her chest, let out a long sigh, not knowing how she was doing. When I left, I was so young, and I don't know what it has been like after so many years. Bang. The door made a loud noise, and after the owner left, the room also quieted down. After arriving at school, Qin Changsheng put down his backpack and sat in his seat. Subconsciously, he began to absorb the energy in the surrounding air, but soon he showed a helpless expression. Sure enough, after breaking through the golden elixir, one's cultivation has come to a standstill, ultimately due to physical limitations. The saying goes, poor literature and rich martial arts. In this world, there are no special natural materials or treasures, and many forging techniques cannot be used at all. A clever woman cannot cook without rice. The overly fragile muscles cannot withstand more spiritual power, which means he cannot go any further unless he finds a way to improve his physical condition. Have you heard about it? Recently, vampires have been haunting our city. What, it's clearly a zombie. You guys made it up, it's just an urban legend. How could there really be that kind of thing? The topic of chatting among classmates caught Qin Changsheng's attention. Zombies. Vampires. He was about to go up and ask, but someone was even faster than him. Excuse me, what were you discussing just now? A girl wearing a blue school uniform, gray short hair, and red-framed glasses seriously asked the classmates who were just discussing. Ah. It's nothing, just chatting. Obviously, they didn't really want to pay attention to her. After all, in their eyes, the girl's conservative clothes and serious tone were not very popular with them. The girl didn't say anything. With a somewhat introverted personality, she realized that others didn't welcome her, so she turned around and walked to Qin Changsheng, putting down her textbook and starting to read. That's right, this is Qin Changsheng's desk mate, with a single name of Hua. The girl is clearly out of place with her surroundings, and there are thin calluses on some parts of her hands, indicating that she is a martial arts practitioner who has been practicing martial arts for years. Qin Changsheng doesn't care at all about these things. Good morning, Hua, do you really care about their topic just now? Upon hearing this question, Hua Mingxian hesitated for a moment, but still shook his head. No, you may not believe it. My father was attacked by monsters before, but everyone said it was just an illusion. Hua's answer was somewhat unexpected. The fact that the monster attack was not necessarily false, after all, he had encountered more than one monster attack in all these years. What made him curious was how an ordinary person survived in front of monsters, but this question was obviously very impolite, and Qin Changsheng was not as foolish as that. Hua, I remember you practiced martial arts before, right? I have always been interested in traditional martial arts and have the opportunity to have a sparring experience. Let me see what your martial arts are like. I'm sorry, practicing martial arts is for the purpose of strengthening my body, and what I have learned is just some family heirloom. Hua didn't hesitate to refuse Qin Changsheng's invitation to spar, but she may also feel a bit embarrassed for her straightforward refusal. After all, Qin Changsheng is one of the few people willing to communicate with her. However, after school, I'll treat you to some noodles. I know there's a good noodle restaurant. Although Hua's original intention was to express apologies, in Qin Changsheng's opinion, this girl's thinking is a bit strange. She was just talking about sparring, but why did she suddenly turn into a treat to eat noodles? He didn't refuse either, nodded and agreed. As the class bell rang, the two of them stopped talking. It was obvious that Hua was listening attentively, but some people's thoughts had already begun to wander beyond the sky. The taste of this noodle shop is quite good. It's good if Qin likes it. The two people who are talking are Qin Changsheng and Hua, who have just come out of the noodle shop. However, the geographical location of this noodle shop is somewhat peculiar. In a long alley, there are hardly any pedestrians at dusk, and it is somewhat desolate and frightening. I don't know how Hua found this store. I have to say, Hua, it's really not easy for you to find such a place. Qin Changsheng sighed a bit. Cough. Cough, because this kind of place is usually cheap and delicious. When his desk mate said this, Hua Ping's serious little face rarely turned red. This alley is indeed a bit hidden for ordinary people. According to the development of the plot, if nothing happens, it will be a pity for the atmosphere here. Suddenly, a strange energy came from afar, which was a somewhat strong destructive energy. Qin Changsheng's face suddenly changed and he turned to China, saying, "Why don't you go back first? Wow, don't come over. Help." Before he could finish speaking, a girl's cry for help came through. Hua, who heard the sound, was obviously not prepared to listen to Qin Changsheng's words and instinctively ran towards the direction where the sound came from. TSK, this girl doesn't make people worry, but she happens to be able to see what the martial arts of this world are like. Qin Changsheng followed behind Hua's back, wanting to see what the young girl called family education. Don't come over, woo-woo. Sure enough, I shouldn't have come out on an adventure. Carol now only feels regretful. After discussing the urban legend of zombies with Qi Luojiang and a few others today, she saw that her friends didn't believe it very much. So the depressed girl decided to go out alone to find evidence. Unexpectedly, she was actually caught. There is a dead end behind, and on the road ahead, there are two dead warriors holding sickles, with piercing red eyes as if they are about to tear her apart. It's over, I actually ran into a zombie. What should I do? If this continues, I will become the news headline of Shanghai City tomorrow. Shocked. How could a high school girl be treated like this? If I become the protagonist of this kind of news, even if I die, I will kill the editor. Give it to me, stay away from her. Just as the two sickle warriors were waving their weapons and preparing to attack Carol, Hua rushed out of the alley and shouted loudly, successfully attracting the attention of the deceased. Step back, Qin, these monsters are no longer humans. Please protect yourself. Seeing Qin Changsheng running over with him, Hua stared fixedly at the two dead soldiers and gestured with an inch fist, admonishing him. Understood, I will find an opportunity to bring that girl over. Don't try to be too strong, be careful of the monster's weapons. Hua nodded and punched cleanly, hitting the dead man's head straight. The other sickle slashed fiercely at her, causing Hua's body to twist and avoid his attack. The other hand slammed heavily into the dead man's chest. Taking advantage of Hua attracting the attention of the deceased, Qin Changsheng rescued Carol. The frightened girl had already fainted and carried her on her back. Quietly following Hua's movements, although this boxing technique may have some flaws in his eyes, it is still a delicate martial art. It can be seen that the girl's so-called family tradition is not a fancy show. The attacked warrior did not retreat as expected by Hua, and the bloodthirsty light in his eyes became even brighter. Taking advantage of the fact that Hua's old strength had passed away and the new strength had not yet emerged, he threw himself forward. Qin Changsheng's right sword finger quietly flicked, causing the body of the deceased to suddenly pause. Hua Mingxian, who was facing this monster for the first time, lacked experience, and his previously flexible moves were now somewhat stiff. The assailant who was not attacked from behind had already raised his sickle, completely blocking her retreat. Inch strength. Yunlan. In the midst of lightning and fire, facing a pincer attack on both sides, Hua not only did not retreat, but instead clasped the deceased's wrist forward, locked his joints, and threw back with force. The sharp sickle easily tore through his companion's body. The broken remains of the deceased fell weakly to the ground, and Hua also took the opportunity to pull himself apart. The deceased's sickle hit the ground, leaving a deep mark. Inch strength. Landslide. Grasping the brief stiffness, Hua's shoulder fiercely collided with the body of the deceased. The powerful impact made the body of the deceased retreat a few steps, but Hua's attack became even more fierce, with his fist repeatedly hitting the body of the deceased. In terms of solo combat, this small sickle warrior was clearly not a match for Hua. His weapon could not even touch the agile Hua. Finally, after another failed attack, Hua found an opportunity. Closing the fist in the abdomen and mobilizing the muscles of the whole body is the most lethal move of the inch heart fist, which is called inch strength. Open the sky. At this moment, the originally complex skills turned into an ordinary straight punch, landing on the head of the deceased. The hard head instantly cracked open, even for the strong vitality of the deceased, it was a fatal injury. Wow! This. The girl, who was originally unconscious, woke up at some point and lay on Qin Changsheng's back, looking at the warrior who had just threatened her life. She was so vulnerable in front of Hua that she felt a bit confused. Hello, are you okay? Upon hearing Qin Changsheng's voice, the girl quickly got off his back, but her still weak legs stumbled and were supported by Hua who came over. Are you injured? Carol, classmate. Hua looked at the young girl with white hair and brown skin in front of her with concern, as if she was frightened quite a bit. Big, probably. I haven't been caught or bitten by them before, so I shouldn't have turned into a zombie, right? Carol instinctively replied. Hua nodded, it seemed like there was no major problem, but it was better to take her to the hospital for a check-up. Hey. Wait. Why do you know my name? Do we know each other? Carol just realized that Hua Gang had just called her name, but strangely, although she felt a bit familiar, she couldn't remember who she was. She was quite familiar with Qin Changsheng. After all, the topics discussed by teenage girls are always inseparable from the handsome guys in school, let alone Qin Changsheng, who is so top-notch. Some even rated him as the grass in the first high school in the sea. Let me be healthy. Carol pinched her chin, occasionally glancing at Qin Changsheng and then at Hua, and then slammed her left palm with her right hand, suddenly realizing. I remember. You're the lucky desk mate of Qin Changsheng, who dresses very tacky. No, you're the first in the grade and the school grass. Hua. Yes, your name is Hua, right? Dot. Dot. Listening to Carol's speech, Qin Changsheng and Hua remained silent in perfect agreement. Thank you very much for remembering my name. What the hell is that bastard giving me this title? Watching the two of them react fiercely, Carol also knew she had said the wrong thing and shrank her head. Chapter 6. Hua's Renovation Plan. You are listening at novelfull.audio. But you're so amazing, you knocked down those monsters with 3 strikes, 5 strikes, and 2 strikes. Carol looked at Hua with some admiration. She only found out today that Hua, who was small and transparent in class, was actually a hidden expert. She completely overturned her previous understanding of China. No, it's better to say that she never paid attention to others before. No, because my family runs a martial arts school, I learned a few moves from my dad since I was young. The girl's eager gaze made Hua feel at a loss, and she casually threw out a reason. Simple Carol did not doubt that the honest Hua would deceive her, so she easily accepted this reason. Then he looked at Qin Changsheng with ill intentions, then at Hua, with a slightly sly smile on his lips indicating that he had not thought of anything good. By the way, it's so late. What are you two doing in such a remote alley? You can't just come out looking for zombies, can you? Are you on a date? Although the girl did not say the second half of the sentence, the two people present could hear her behind the scenes. Qin Changsheng has thick skin and neither refutes nor admits. Hua, on the other hand, was blushed by Carol's words. Poor girl, in just one day of experience with Qin Changsheng, has been teased countless times. The fair fists clenched tightly, and Hua was still trying to explain, but Carol felt guilty. If I were hit by those fists, I would definitely die, just like the zombies lying on the ground over there. Since we can't come up with an explanation, solving the person who raised the problem is also a solution. Cough cough, I know now. You must be some secret organization's agents. This kind of monster is very dangerous at first glance. In order to protect the city, you use your student identity as a cover and quietly protect everyone in the dark. Before his expression in China became dangerous, Carol cleverly changed the topic, but this guy became more and more addicted as he talked, even coming out of the Rex Alliance. No, we just finished our meal at the noodle shop. Hua interrupted Carol's wild thoughts with a headache. God knows why this girl is so detached, which made Hua unable to keep up with her thinking. So it's true that we're still on a date. But is there really a noodle shop in this place? Carol murmured roast in her heart. After coming out of the police station, Qin Changsheng was still thinking about what he had just seen, while Carol was holding Hua behind and whispering. After coming out of the alley, the three of them decided to report to the police, but Qin Changsheng specifically instructed the two not to reveal the truth, saying that by the time they saw it, the monster had already been eliminated. Before leaving, he had already used magic to erase the traces of the battle on the scene. With these mortal means, it seems impossible to discover anything. This is also for the safety of both of them. After all, they are just high school students. If they are involved in any dangerous things, it will always be a trouble. Under the unified caliber of the three, coupled with the absence of any suspicious traces on site, the professionals who came to investigate did not embarrass a few people. After recording their testimony and signing a confidentiality agreement, they let the few people leave. But what Qin Changsheng cared about was the badge on the man's chest. He had seen the sign on it. In the Vostok 51 colony 8 years ago, the seal on the bulletin board was exactly the same as the badge he saw today. Is it a mysterious organization in this world? Will Alicia be related to them? What are these occasional monsters and enchanted people? A series of questions lingered in his mind, causing him some headaches. The truth of many things was deliberately covered up. He didn't know what the problem was in this world, but he knew that special people would definitely bring trouble. So he has never exposed his abilities. Since there are people who can deal with those monsters, perhaps there are also people who are stronger than him. It is best to act cautiously before being able to determine the other party's position. Qin Changsheng, Qin Changsheng. Carol's energetic voice pulled his thoughts back. What's wrong? I just discussed with Hua, it's already so late today. Why don't you come to my house and rest? My house is very close to here. Qin Changsheng glanced at Hua. Obviously, the honest Hua had been convinced, and upon seeing this, he did not refuse. Anyway, for him, even meditating and practicing on the park bench was the same. And today Carol was also attacked. What if something unexpected happens? So this is out of kindness, not for any other reason, not for any other reason. Regarding this point of closeness, Carol really didn't deceive anyone. The three of them walked out of the police station in less than 10 minutes and arrived at Carol's house. For Qin Changsheng and Hua, the decoration here was extremely luxurious. It's hard to imagine that Carol is still a little rich woman. Is it really okay for us to live here? Your family. Hua is a bit worried. It's okay, because of studying here, I'm the only one living here. My parents are abroad all year round. If you like it, you can move over and live with me. This place is close to the school, and we are good friends who share difficulties. As she spoke, Carol started talking nonsense again, as if she was already fantasizing about the days when the school grass and the school bully, in her opinion, no one in the whole school would be a match for Hua, lived with her. Hua still couldn't let go, and the thick-skinned Qin Changsheng was already sitting on the soft sofa enjoying delicious fruits. It should be said that life in this world is really comfortable enough. If it weren't for various reasons, I might have already started being a salted fish. In the final room allocation, as it was a solitary apartment with only one bedroom, Hua and Carol shared the same room, while Qin Changsheng slept on the sofa in the living room. Anyway, he seemed to quite like this sofa. One night passed. Qin Changsheng rarely fell asleep, but instead slept well and got up early. After washing up, he went to the kitchen to prepare breakfast for the girls who were still asleep. There are not many fresh ingredients in the refrigerator, most of them are pre-made dishes, which is not surprising. Even Carol doesn't look like someone who can cook. When he was busy in the kitchen, the bedroom door gently opened, and Hua was wearing a sports suit that didn't fit well. To be more precise, his chest was too wide, which made Hua feel a bit loose when he was wearing it. Get up so early. I've prepared a sandwich. Do you want to give it a try? Thank you. When Qin Changsheng brought their breakfast to the dining table, Hua had already sat upright. Take this book and take a look. During the meal, Qin Changsheng took out a thin notebook from somewhere and handed it to Hua. What is this? Hua took it from his hand and saw on the cover, in bold and powerful font, that Tai Chi was written. This was an extremely famous set of martial arts in Qin Changsheng's past life. Although it was a set of martial arts, he practiced internal martial arts, emphasizing the importance of using softness to overcome hardness. Yesterday I saw that you had more martial arts skills than you had before, but your power was insufficient. This Tai Chi fist follows an internal path, using softness to overcome hardness, and using weakness to achieve strength. It should be very suitable for you. Qin Changsheng replied casually. Hua flipped through the pages of the book and saw that she, who had been practicing martial arts since childhood, could naturally see the preciousness of this set of fist techniques. Compared to her own inch-heart fist, it was only strong and not weak. She was about to decline, but was interrupted by Qin Changsheng. Hua, don't refuse. Qin Changsheng organized the language slightly. This world is not that simple. I have encountered something even more powerful than yesterday's monster before. Everything has a cause and effect, and you have a passionate heart. Since you have already touched the other side of this world, you will definitely encounter such things in the future. Instead of blaming the lack of strength in times of danger, it is better to prepare in advance. Hua knew that Qin Changsheng was right. It was the second time he had encountered such a thing since his father was attacked by such a monster. Seeing that Hua no longer opposed, Qin Changsheng nodded. This set of martial arts was silently written by him using techniques last night. He handed it over to Hua not only because she knew how to use the inch heart fist, but more importantly, the girl's kind heart made Qin Changsheng recognize her as a friend. It's still early. After dinner, let's go out and give it a try. I will help you fully grasp it in the days to come. In the early morning, the park was still quiet, with only a few elderly men and sanitation workers walking outside. Qin Changsheng and Hua arrived at a deserted place. Tai Chi does not emphasize a single move, but rather focuses on intention. A person's breath is divided into yin and yang, while when facing enemies, it is a continuous and endless breath. While explaining, Qin Changsheng adjusted Hua's posture and used spiritual power to subtly guide the strength inside Hua's body, making her familiar with the internal mental process. For him, this was also an attempt, and he was not sure if Huaneng could cultivate the inner family mind technique. After all, the two worlds are fundamentally different, so he guided the first movement of energy, and even if something went wrong, he could stop it in time without causing any negative impact on Hua. Fortunately, unexpected things did not happen, and Hua's acceptance of Tai Chi was extremely high, as if it was tailor-made for her. After a round of great circulation, Huaneng clearly felt that his strength had increased slightly. Although not much, this immediate effect was undoubtedly addictive. Just as I was about to continue operating the Great Zhou Tian, I was stopped by Qin Changsheng. No way, as the saying goes, when the moon is full, it will be a loss, and when the water is full, it will overflow. This is still your first time practicing martial arts, and you should not act too hastily, especially for martial arts practitioners. One mistake can cause the true energy to backfire and become the kind of monster you saw yesterday. In fact, he didn't know the principle behind that monster, but that didn't prevent him from taking it out to scare Hua. From her reaction, the effect was still very good. After a few more punches, it was already daylight, and the two of them tidied up before returning to Carol's house. Perhaps due to his first time practicing martial arts, Hua sweated a lot on his body, and after the initial feeling disappeared, he felt a bit weak. In the end, he was helped back by Qin Changsheng. Carol was eating a sandwich while secretly looking at the two of them. Heaven and earth have a conscience, it's not her fault for gossiping and being careless. Going out together in the early morning, sweating profusely and with weak legs, both of them were in high spirits. These elements add up. If you say that the two of them are nothing, even the police uncle wouldn't believe it. But Carol only dared to say these words in her heart. Even if it was weak Hua, it must be effortless to win the small Carol. But looking at the handsome Qin Changsheng and the rustic Hua, Carol's OCD in her heart was uncontrollable. How could such a beautiful Hua dress up like this, and still wear regular clothes? How can it be repaired? This couple of CP is locked by Carol. It's useless for anyone to come. In her heart, a transformation plan called Hua quietly took shape. Chapter 7. Storm approaches. You are listening at novel full.audio. De co lois ara trong quatrin lay text. Chapter 8. Third Collapse Outbreak. You are listening at novel full.audio. Hua, this is my first time visiting my good friend's hometown. I may disappoint you, but my place is small and there is nothing special about it. No way. That's Hua's hometown. And your martial arts school. I must have uncle teach me a few moves then. In the terminal of the airport, the energetic voice of the girl kept ringing. Carol and Hua each held different colored suitcases, which were different from the previous Hua. Today, Hua has clearly been dressed up well. The school uniform and glasses he usually wears are gone, replaced by a shoulder-length light green tee-shirt. The tied-up hair was also put down, and I wore a cute beret, and even had my nails done. Of course, all of this is Carol's credit. Since that night, Carol has always intentionally or unintentionally taken Hua out shopping, buying various things, while Qin Changsheng is the two's ruthless bag-carrying machine. Qin Changsheng also noticed the change of the girl, and with friends by her side, Hua's smile on her face grew more and more. Qin Changsheng, standing in front of the French window, did not participate in the topic of the girls. The sky outside was gloomy, and the next moment it seemed that it would rain heavily. It is a foregone fact that flights will be delayed in this weather. Qin Changsheng's sense of unease in his heart became increasingly severe, and for every additional minute he stayed in this city, he would encounter greater danger. Qin Changsheng turned his head and looked to the side with some concern. His desk mate had become much more cheerful during this period of time. Although she has already entered the realm of Tai Chi cultivation, she is still not a match when encountering powerful monsters, and she does not want her friends to encounter any danger. Suffering can help people grow, but no one can praise it. Whether as friends or as a master of Tai Chi, Qin Changsheng only hopes that they can be safe and sound. 170 kilometers away from the airport, at an altitude of 1,000 m above the ground, a transport plane belonging to the fire Moth is flying steadily. As she approached Shanghai City, Alicia's heart was filled with inexplicable joy. She didn't know where this feeling came from, but the beautiful girl wouldn't get entangled in such things. The transport plane suddenly experienced a jolt, the cabin alarm went off, and the values on the crash monitoring table began to soar. Alicia's face changed, and when she looked out the window, the once bustling city suddenly became chaotic. Explosions and flames were everywhere, and huge destructive beasts appeared out of nowhere, wreaking havoc in every corner of the city. The desperate voices of people seemed to reach her ears from such a distance. Despair, fear, anger, and countless negative emotions made Alicia unable to sit still. "Open the cabin and I will make an emergency landing here, notifying Mebius that a collapse disaster has occurred in Shanghai City." But the sudden communication left the girl stunned. "Alicia, please change your route now and you must immediately head to Far East Chongqing City." Mebius's voice came out from the communication channel. "Why? There is only one small team stationed here in Shanghai City, and they cannot handle such a large-scale collapse disaster. There are 300,000 people in this city." Alicia widened her eyes, puzzled by Mebius's command, and her tone couldn't help but be a bit intense. But Mebius ignored the girl's emotions, and her calm voice seemed to have sentenced this bustling city to death. 5 minutes ago, a 2200 HW collapse energy response was detected in Chongqing City, and it is still increasing. With this intensity of collapse energy, it can be confirmed that the third collapse has already erupted in Chongqing City. Shanghai City was only affected by the aftermath of the birth of the law, and the chasing fire Moth is mobilizing all military forces to prepare for the fight against the third law. The evacuation of Shanghai City will be handled by the Chinese military, and the 5th Squad will also be transferred from Shanghai City to the Far East. What about the people here? Are they just abandoned? Upon hearing the news, Alicia couldn't accept this kind of thing, and her voice lost its usual liveliness, only heaviness. In terms of the outcome. Yes, the scope of the third collapse is centered around Chongqing City and is constantly spreading, and Shanghai City is just one of them. If the third lawyer escapes, you are more aware of the consequences than I am. Alicia, in order to seek greater welfare, we have no choice. Mebius is rare to have any quirks. Although she has conducted experiments that violate ethical standards, it does not mean that she is a cold-blooded person. Throughout, she worked hard for the future development of the human race. In her view, the only way out of this disaster called collapse is to lead humanity to achieve higher evolution. The current law masters have not fully emerged yet, and the level of collapse energy is still increasing. We only have less than 4 hours left. Mebius issued an order to the pilot to change the route, and for some things, it's better to be the villain yourself. Let Alicia take a good rest. Let the 5th team stay, I will go to Changcheng City, and I will fight against the third law. Looking at the city below that was being destroyed, Alicia's eyes showed a strong expression of sadness. There was a moment of silence across the communication. I see, I will have the 5th team stay in Shanghai City to assist with the rescue. After saying these words, Mebius hung up the communication. Alicia knew that even if the 5th team stayed here, it would only be a drop in the bucket. How many people will die in this crisis? She couldn't imagine that it wasn't the cold numbers on the report, but the vivid lives one by one. Over the years of travel, she has seen life collapse and leave. During the second collapse, due to the arrival of the lawgiver in sparsely populated Siberia, he was successfully defeated by Alicia without paying too much price. But this time, the scope of the third collapse swept across half of Asia. At the moment of the collapse, Qin Changsheng hugged the two girls beside him. After the first round of outbreak, many people around them were instantly transformed into death by a strong collapse, and several huge tank-level collapse beasts appeared out of thin air on the airport runway. Fortunately, Hua did not have any adverse reactions. On the contrary, Carol, under the erosion of this intensity of collapse, began to have light purple lines on her body. Qin Changsheng quickly sealed the meridians inside her body and used spiritual power to lay a thin film around several people to resist the collapse energy. Hua, you carry Carol on your back, I'll lead the way ahead and follow me closely. Seeing that Carol's condition was no longer deteriorating, Qin Changsheng handed it over to Hua and instructed him. Leave it to me, I will protect her well. Taking Carol from Qin Changsheng's hand, he seemed to be performing magic. He pulled out a long sword from somewhere and stabbed at the fierce warriors with open teeth and claws. Hua also wanted to help, but saw that Qin Changsheng's method of dealing with the dead was very sharp and straightforward. So he gave up the idea of going up to help and, carrying Carol behind his back, followed closely behind him to break through the encirclement. Chapter 9. The disaster named Collapse. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Dead people rushed in like a tide, and in the moment of disaster, this city with a permanent population of nearly 300 million people, I don't know how many people became dead in the first place. If Qin Changsheng gives his all, it won't be very difficult to break through from here. But behind him were not only two maids, although some of them became martyrs, there were still many living people in this airport. If indiscriminately cast spells here, it will only cause a more terrifying massacre than a group of dead soldiers. The powerful spells cannot be used, and Qin Changsheng needs to be distracted to maintain the true Qi barrier for Hua and Carol. He can only choose to use his spirit sword to kill the dead soldiers blocking the way. After experiencing the initial panic, some people who could stay awake saw Qin Changsheng killing the dead as simple as cutting melons and vegetables. They all found the most convenient thing at hand and ran towards Qin Changsheng with difficulty. At some moment, a ray of spiritual light flashed in his heart, and the crystal flower hanging on his chest lit up for a moment. With a fierce turn of his head, he looked into the distant sky, where the thick clouds prevented him from seeing anything. Changsheng. Be careful. At the call of China, Qin Changsheng narrowly dodged the weapon wielded by the assassin, and with a backhand sword, stabbed the assassin who had attacked him in the opposite direction. What's wrong with you? If you can't hold on, then leave it to me. Hua asked with concern that she had just seen Qin Changsheng suddenly freeze, without any desire to dodge the direct attack. It's nothing, I'm in good condition. Just protect yourself and Carol, close your eyes. Suppressing his doubts, although it was only a brief moment, he did feel a familiar aura. Is it Alicia? Without much time to think, I saw those still alive people gathering in my direction around me. The long sword swept out and dealt with the two fallen soldiers who were rushing towards me. With a sword in his right hand and a secret technique in his left hand, he quickly locked his eyes on the dead man in his field of vision. His sword is brilliant, his movements are turbulent, and 5 thunderbolts descend from the world to control the sky. The spirit sword was lifted straight up, wrapped in lightning beams. Slash! Swinging the spirit sword fiercely, a white light flashed in the hall, and every warrior he had locked in was struck by a thunderbolt. Most of the dead were directly bombed to the bottom, but there were also a few extremely tenacious warriors who fell to the ground, their bodies constantly twitching. The precise casting within this range placed a great mental burden on him, and fatigue surged in waves. There was no time to repair each one, and the recent commotion had already attracted several tank-level collapse beasts on the airport runway. The road ahead has calmed down, and under the leadership of Qin Changsheng, the survivors arrived at an underground garage. Their divine sense scanned it and found that there were no demons present. Everyone, take a break here first. I'll go out and see if there are any other survivors. Don't leave here. A magic array was placed around the garage to conceal the breath, and a leaf that was picked up casually was solidified with spiritual power. It's not safe here now. There are still a few monsters outside. I'll go deal with them. If there's any danger, I'll tear off this leaf as soon as possible. Be careful. Carol is still in a coma, and someone must stay to take care of her, although Qin Changsheng just showed off a strange trick. However, in the eyes of Hua, it is still very dangerous for Qin Changsheng to deal with such a huge monster alone. Hua had never felt so powerless before. He thought that after learning Tai Chi with Qin Changsheng, he was already strong enough, but at this moment, he couldn't help at all. A monster of that size can make people feel hopeless just by looking at it. Is what they have learned really useful? Hua fell into deep suspicion. Qin Changsheng patted her shoulder without saying a word. Belief is a matter that if one cannot fully comprehend, no matter what others say, it is useless. He can teach Hua to practice martial arts and improve her body, but he cannot change her thoughts. This kind of thing can only be relied on by herself. The ground suddenly shook and a roar came from a distance. Qin Changsheng stopped and quickly arrived at the ground. In the distance where water and sky meet, a purple thunderbolt falls from the world, and the golden pill inside constantly trembles, conveying a dangerous warning. A hint of shock couldn't help but appear on his face. The fluctuation of this energy level, not to mention that he is only in the golden elixir stage now, even if he has entered the yuanying stage, it is probably enough to deal with this thing. Do people in this world really have the ability to handle this? He is somewhat uncertain. Setting aside tedious thoughts, this is not what he needs to consider now. As the thunder fell, the energy concentration around increased again, and the clouds in the sky seemed to be distorted. The towering buildings that were seen everywhere before are collapsing, and the once bustling city has become a human purgatory in an instant. Under the influence of this force, the originally calm monster suddenly became furious and indiscriminately attacked everything around it. And Qin Changsheng on the ground caught their attention like a bright lamp shining in the darkness. The 4 chariot-level collapse beasts instantly locked onto him, raising their sturdy forelimbs and charging towards him at an extremely fast speed. Qin Changsheng attempted to use the methods of the Imperial Beast sect to communicate with them, but this was in vain. He couldn't even feel that these monsters had the ability to think. All their actions were instinctive, as if their purpose was to destroy everything. Since there is no spiritual intelligence, it can only be humanitarian destruction. These monster beasts look scary, but in his perception, they are not as good as the one he defeated 8 years ago. 1-4, my advantage lies. With the left hand pinching the formula and the right hand holding the sword, they charge forward and continuously add various special effects to the spiritual sword in their hands. Each attack leaves a mark on the ground. Several tank-level collapse beasts couldn't even touch him, as more and more traces on the ground began to outline a formation. Seize the opportunity, dodge the falling attack, and detach from the formation. Fool, go to hell. Lifting his foot and stomping the ground fiercely, the entire formation rapidly expanded, surrounding 4 chariot-level collapse beasts. There was no earth-shattering sound, and after the formation disappeared, only a large pit constantly emitting smoke remained in place, and everything inside disappeared. The excessively high temperature directly burned everything wrapped in the array into nothingness. The biggest difference between formations and spells is that one can only use their own spiritual power, while formations can increase their power by utilizing the free power between heaven and earth. After using the rich energy of this place to kill the collapsing beast, Qin Changsheng came to the city center. The closer he was to the city center, the more tragic the surrounding scenery became. After killing all the monsters he encountered along the way, Qin Changsheng came to the resettlement house where he lived. The once dilapidated building has turned into ruins, with broken cables igniting wooden furniture and raging fires burning everywhere. Sensing with spiritual power, I couldn't find what I expected and couldn't help but sigh. Afterwards, he no longer stayed and continued to clean up demons in the city. When he encountered surviving survivors, he would take them with him. When there were enough people, he would find a safe place to set up a magic formation. Although this survivor is insignificant compared to the population base of the entire city, it is already his limit. You can also see many soldiers fighting against monsters with weapons, but weapons that can penetrate steel plates cannot even destroy the shells of monsters. He could clearly feel their fear, but to his surprise, the fully armed soldiers did not back down when facing the monster. A feeling of inexplicability lingered in his heart, and the taste was not pleasant. We can only mechanically continue to clean up the severely affected areas. I don't know how long it has been, but the rotation of the golden pill in my body has become slower and slower, and the spiritual power of my whole body has also approached exhaustion. The heavy pressure in the skies suddenly eased, and the concentration of collapse energy in the air began to slowly decrease. Qin Changsheng knew that this was because the source of this mutation had been solved, and those monsters would not continue to appear in the future. I breathed a sigh of relief and found a slightly safer place to sit cross-legged, starting to recover my state. Recalling what they have seen and heard along the way, those soldiers referred to this disaster as the third collapse. It is hard to imagine that such a disaster is already the third time. Feeling inexplicably heavy, it was the first time since he came to this world that he had seen such a situation where life was like grass. The people here advocate equality for all, and those with power will protect the weak, even if they don't even know each other. Those warriors who go one after another, fearless of death, even though they possess stronger power, are willing to sacrifice their lives for unrelated people without hesitation. Qin Changsheng asked himself that he couldn't do it. He only saved people because he had the ability. If someone asks him to die for those ordinary people, he will not hesitate to turn his head and dispose of the person who said this sentence. But in this disaster called collapse, no one hesitated or wavered about it. Qin Changsheng couldn't figure it out. In his opinion, nothing is more precious than his own life, but he likes this world. If I come into this world, it's really fate's will to make him do something. So he is willing to contribute his own strength to protect this world. As he recovered, a large number of armed forces entered the city one after another, sweeping and rescuing trapped survivors. To their surprise, in the mouths of many survivors, it was a sword fairy holding a long sword who saved them. The soldiers in charge of search and rescue reported the situation to the 5th team, which is cleaning up the collapsed beasts in the city. After learning the news, Himiko looked at the girl beside him and said, "Don't worry, it seems that your companion hasn't encountered any major trouble yet." Hua Mingxian breathed a sigh of relief. Shortly after Qin Changsheng left, the 5th team led by Himiko found the survivors of the underground garage, and Hua and Carol were also taken out. At first, Hua was unwilling to leave, fearing that Qin Changsheng would not be able to find them after he left. After learning from other survivors that the girl's companion was the one who rescued the airport survivors, Himiko decided to take the girl into the city to search together. However, to her surprise, facing those monsters, the girl not only did not fear them, but also asked for a pair of boxing armor from her. After getting a little familiar with it, she followed the frontline troops into the battlefield. And her speed in dealing with the dead was much faster than those well-trained soldiers. After a few battles, she didn't even get injured, and without the help of exoskeleton armor, she was just a bit weak. Chapter 10. The Moth Chasing Fire. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. After recovering some strength, Qin Changsheng realized that the leaf he had left for Hua was not far from him. Did something happen? He furrowed his brow and got up to rush towards Hua's direction. Soon, he breathed a sigh of relief. Hua is battling a dead soldier, surrounded by many fully armed soldiers. A woman with fiery red hair is wielding a heavy sword and killing in all directions on the battlefield. After dealing with the deceased in China, Qin Changsheng suddenly appeared beside her with a stern face. What are you doing here? He was a bit angry. Teaching her martial arts was to protect himself, not to make her rush to jump into the pit of fire. Is the battlefield such a dangerous place where she, a high school student, can come? Seeing Qin Changsheng suddenly appear, Hua panicked for a moment, then rushed over and hugged him. I'm worried about you. The sudden embrace extinguished his anger in an instant, and he reluctantly patted Hua's soft back. I'm very strong, this level of danger is nothing at all, don't worry. Feeling Qin Changsheng's hand, Hua suddenly realized that he had just been excited and jumped into his arms. His pretty face blushed slightly and he quickly broke free. At this point, the battlefield was almost cleaned up, and Himiko came to the two of them with a heavy sword. Oh, are you the sword immortal? Qin Changsheng looked at this handsome woman with some confusion. It's the names of those people you saved. Let's get to know each other. My name is Himiko, and you can also call me Bimihu, whatever you want. The woman warmly extended her hand to him. Hello, I'm not a sword immortal. My name is Qin Changsheng. Politely shaking hands, Qin Changsheng nodded and replied. At this time, she was still on the battlefield full of crisis, and the woman did not give much introduction, but only commanded the troops to move forward. Qin Changsheng noticed that their weapons were somewhat different. Compared to ordinary weapons, this type of melee weapon that uses the ability of destruction has a more significant killing power against destruction beasts and warriors. And on each soldier's armband, there is an identical mark. A burning moth. Himiko arranged for the two to stay at a base, where Carol also received treatment. The good news is that her ability to resist collapse is very good and she has not been infected with collapse disease. It's just that her first exposure to high concentrations of collapse energy has caused some stress reactions in her body. After arriving at this base, Hua and Qin Changsheng haven't seen many others. Their rooms are adjacent, and robots deliver 3 meals a day to their doorstep. After seeking the consent of the two, Himiko sent them here. Qin Changsheng wanted to learn about this mysterious organization, while Hua hoped that Himiko could help inquire about his father's whereabouts. In the next few days, Himiko disappeared without a trace, and Qin Changsheng didn't pay much attention. After all, this kind of thing happened just now. But Hua was always worried. Even when Qin Changsheng taught her martial arts, she was absent-minded. Alright, that's all for today. Qin Changsheng sighed and realized that Hua's condition had changed significantly since a few days ago. The young girl lowered her head somewhat lost, and the tragic situation in Shanghai City has been lingering in her mind these days, with the unease in her heart constantly tormenting her. Didi, you have visitors visiting. The smart door issued a reminder, and Qin Changsheng walked over to open the door. Standing outside was Himiko, whose face was not very attractive. Hello, may I ask? How is it outside? After seeing Himiko, Hua asked nervously. But Himiko didn't respond to her immediately, but glanced at Qin Changsheng. Okay, you guys talk, I'll wait for you outside. No, don't leave, just say it here. Hua took a step forward and grabbed Qin Changsheng's wrist. Himiko sighed. Hua, you need to be prepared. What I'm going to say next is all bad news, so bad that you can't believe it. But they are all real, and this is not a dream. Qin Changsheng felt Hua holding her hand and suddenly exerting force, and the girl's heart was obviously not as calm as it appeared on the surface. Let's draw a conclusion. Shanghai city has completely disappeared. This disaster has destroyed the entire city, and the number of survivors is less than 1%. Most of them have been resettled in this area by us. Himiko's words made Hua feel a bit breathless for a moment. Less than 1% of the survivors, which means that in this city with a permanent population of nearly 3 million, less than 30,000 people have survived. And the majority of the remaining people will pass away under the torment of collapse disease. How many people will remain in the end? No one is willing to calculate this data, and the weight of life at this moment is just a string of numbers. In the days to come, far away from Shanghai city, it's best to completely forget it. There will always be unexpected changes in life that suddenly strike, and you have no other choice but to accept. And forget. So, what about my hometown? My father? Hua trembled and asked this question. Himiko remained silent for a moment, looking at Hua with some sympathy. I'm sorry, the impact of this disaster is very extensive, and it has not been completely eradicated until now. The East Asian region has suffered devastating blows, and your hometown. No one has survived. The sudden bad news made Hua almost unable to stand steady. Qin Changsheng quickly supported her and let her sit on the bed. What exactly is all this? Hua Rant's murmuring question. Accidents, natural disasters, meteorites. You can think whatever you want, I can't deceive you. You're right there, you saw everything. Hua gritted her lips tightly, trying not to cry. Qin Changsheng gently patted her back. Girl, if you want to cry, just cry and let it out. The road ahead is still long, don't let yourself get addicted to reminiscing about the past, don't let yourself live in nightmares forever. Listening to Qin Changsheng's comfort, Hua could no longer suppress his inner emotions. He bent down and buried himself on his shoulder, tears streaming down his face. Himiko also sighed upon seeing this, stopped talking, quietly retreated out, and stood at the door. Since she joined the fire-chasing Moth, she has seen too many of these things. The third collapse completely shattered what humans are proud of. Public opinion can no longer be controlled, and the darkness of human nature has been magnified countless times in this situation. I'm the only one left, Changsheng. I'm the only one left. Cry. Just cry, don't worry, you still have Carol and me. The girl's suppressed crying made him feel a tightness in his chest, as if he was tightly clenched by a fist, and a strange emotion took root and sprouted in his heart. After crying, Hua's complexion clearly improved a lot. Originally, she had a childish pretty face, but now she was full of determination. After waiting outside for Himiko to hear the commotion in the room disappear, he walked in again. Is it much better? Next, you will be sent to Australia for resettlement, or you can. Thank you for telling me this news, Ms. Himiko, but I want to know the truth. Hua interrupted her words, which left Himiko stunned. Why? She was a bit puzzled. Hua still had plenty of time to live the life she wanted, but once she found out the truth, she could only bid farewell to ordinary daily life, and danger would fill her future life. Hua doesn't know how to answer this question. Is it because he wants to avenge his father? Or is it because I am not willing to be mediocre? She had no answer, just like the day she left the shelter to search for Qin Changsheng. She didn't know why she did it, everything she did was to follow the decision she made in her heart at that moment. I want to do something, not for myself, but also for others, do something. I have had this kind of conversation with many people, but the vast majority of them want to get some hope from me. I understand because their previous lives have been roughly erased. Listening to the girl's answer, Himiko sighed. But I can't do it, I can't give everyone hope. Have you seen this symbol? The moth chasing after the fire will eventually be devoured by the flames. It can only stay in the world with a small flame, and all I can do is pass on this spark. Himiko pointed to the badge on his chest. A burning moth. I will give you the answer, but are you ready? All the rest of your life will carry its weight. Hua remained silent for a moment, then turned his head to look at Qin Changsheng beside him. He didn't speak, just nodded at her, indicating that he would support all her decisions. The girl who received affirmation no longer hesitated and firmly said to Himiko. Tell us, I have become fully aware. Himiko nodded and walked out of the room. Follow up, this place is no longer suitable for you. The two of them followed Himiko's footsteps through the corridor and arrived at a hall. The first thing they saw upon entering was the huge and unique symbol on the opposite wall. Our organization, named Chasing the Fire Moth, is a joint emergency response organization established by countries around the world. As for the disaster you experienced in Shanghai City, collapse, there will be specialized training in this area after you enter the Chasing the Fire Moth. The fifth team I am in, also known as the Special Collapse Response 5th Group. Himiko divided the information in his hand between the two people, and everything written on it was something that ordinary people would never see. The materials provide detailed information about the collapse and the lawmaker. Upon seeing a line above, Qin Changsheng's pupils contracted slightly, but his hand's speed did not slow down, as if the previous movement did not exist. But a great uproar had already stirred up in his heart. The second law was successfully conquered by Alicia in the Siberian region.